Hello and welcome to episode 249 of our SAP on Azure video podcast. Today is July 9th, and together with Goran, we are here to talk about anything related to SAP at Microsoft. Hello, everyone. So in previous episodes, we talked a lot about what you can do with AI, Copilot, and your SAP data. We see a lot of customers that have their SAP data in the meantime in Fabric and let the magic begin. However, the first step for this integration is to get the data actually into Fabric. And today we want to summarize and talk about some of these options that are available. To provide us with this overview, I'm glad to have Ulrich Christ and Bartosz Jarkowski with us today. So as always, before we dive into the topic, maybe a quick introduction from both of you.
Ulrich, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I can start. So thanks a lot for having me again, Holger. It's always a pleasure to be on your podcast. My name is Ulrich Christ. I'm the product manager in the Microsoft data integration team responsible for SAP connectivity. So whenever it comes to getting your SAP data into anywhere in the Azure cloud, especially with a focus on Fabric, of course, these days, I'm the responsible product manager working with our engineering team to enable you to do so.
Perfect. Good to have you again. Bartosz, you were also already on the show, but still.
Yes, thank you for the invite, Holger. My name is Bartosz Jarkowski. I'm a program manager in SAP Extend and Innovate team. I collaborate closely with you, Holger, and Ulrich, of course, on helping customers to get the most out of their SAP data. So where Ulrich focuses mainly on the connectivity, I'm trying to look at the whole story from data extraction up to getting actionable insights and also enable usage of SAP data with newest technologies like artificial intelligence and all the LLMs. Nice to meet you.
Perfect. Perfect. So we talked about the whole data story a lot in the past, but maybe Ulrich, before we get started, can you quickly talk about what is Fabric, just very briefly?
Yeah. Let me share a couple of slides and set the scene a little bit before we dive deeper into specifically the SAP topic. I hope you can see my screen now. Okay, yep. Perfect. So let's very quickly, and I'll jump across the slides, and we'll later have an interactive discussion anyway. So I'm not going into presentation mode, but jump between slides. So let's stick to this layout. So very quickly, what is Fabric? In one word, Fabric is our software as a service platform for data, right? Comprehensively covering all the aspects which are relevant for dealing with data, from data integration, which you see on the left-hand side with Data Factory, over data engineering, which is basically notebook experiences, data warehousing for relational data, data science and machine learning capabilities, up to Power BI and real-time intelligence. So covering all the aspects, all the workloads, as we call it, which are relevant for analytics in the broadest sense, based on, and that's what you see at the bottom here, on OneLake, which is the software as a service version of Azure Data Lake, so to speak. So it's a unified storage layer on which all of these workloads collaborate and can exchange data without having to copy. All the workloads use exactly the same data format. No proprietary specific features in any workloads. Whatever you create with one workload, you can consume in the other one. Right. So a lot of unification there. And of course, everything powered by AI. We have copilots in basically every experience throughout the product. So that's, in a nutshell, the summary of Fabric. When we go a little bit deeper into Fabric Data Factory, it's basically the combination of what we used to have in the platform as a service world with Azure Data Factory for the professional use cases, professional enterprise data integration use cases, and the self-service use cases, which you might know from Power Query. For example, in Excel, in Power BI, even in Office products, right? So basically covering all the personas which are interested in doing data integration, whether it's mass data integration at enterprise scale for people who are familiar with Azure Data Factory or other ETL products, to the needs of individual business users who want to do self-service in their own responsibility with their own data sets. And as I said, what we develop with Fabric Data Factory is basically we combine all of these experiences into one unified product inside Fabric.
So basically, where in the past I had to stitch all of this together myself with existing tools, with other tools or something like that. And maybe some things were missing. Now with Data Factory, there's an end-to-end story that covers all the different personas.
Not just with Data Factory, with all of Fabric, right? I mean, basically, as you said, I mean, all the aspects are covered in and provided in one experience with a unified user experience, with unified user management, no integration needed between these workloads, right? Everything is part of one big platform. So as you said, I mean, all the integration aspects, which typically in a best of breed approach are relevant and time consuming and also costly and error prone in a certain sense, all that goes away when you use one unified software as a service solution. At the same time, by the way, and that's important, even though we're trying to provide all the capabilities end to end we need for analytics, we're of course open, right? So openness is a very important aspect of Fabric. We are open for third-party tools which can connect to Fabric, which can also ingest data. We'll see that later into Fabric in all senses, right? And we provide a lot of APIs around everything. So it's not a closed ecosystem. In fact, it's a very open ecosystem which can integrate with existing tool sets as well. Maybe just to briefly describe the scope of what we provide with Fabric Data Factory, basically starts with connectivity on the left-hand side. We have around, I think, 170 plus connectors which come out of the box with Fabric for all the major sources which you know, whether that's cloud or whether that's enterprise sources. We have capabilities for data movement, orchestration, and transformation, and we very frequently have support two flavors of it. So we support a UI-driven flavor like copy job pipelines for orchestrations, or Dataflow Gen 2 for transformations. So that's interactive tools where you have a graphical user experience, but we also support ways of doing things in a more script-oriented way. For example, when it comes to transformations, you can also use notebooks to do these transformations. Or when it comes to orchestration, you can either use pipelines if you go for a graphical approach, or you can use Apache Airflow if you want to go for a scripted approach. So again, all personas, all preferences, we try to account for and provide experiences in our product. And on the right-hand side, of course, we also provide everything you need for monitoring, for error handling, deployment, CI/CD. All of these capabilities are there as well. I think that's basically the introduction and what we need to set the scene for those who want to understand what Fabric is.
Perfect. And we saw on the previous slide best in class in connectivity, and obviously connectivity to SAP. That's what we care about.
That's a
podcast.
Big ask. Basically, every major customer you talk to asks questions about SAP data, right? And there are, when you talk to these customers, you see that they have very different preferences and they have very different levels of complexity as well. So in order to account for that, we're basically following an approach which is based on three different pillars, as I want to call it, even though this looks like organized oriented in a horizontal way. So maybe I should have done it in a vertical way when talking about pillars. But in the end, we have three different approaches to providing comprehensive SAP connectivity. Number one is, of course, as you saw on the previous slide, we want to provide good out-of-the-box connectivity, which can serve all standard SAP use cases without having to employ a different tool, buying some licenses, doing anything complex, something which you can basically set up very quickly and easily, and which serves most of the standard use cases. The baseline, when it comes to what we want to achieve and where we want to be, is basically we want to achieve feature parity with what we have in Azure Data Factory. Right? Azure Data Factory has had comprehensive SAP connectivity for many, many years, basically providing the same level of comprehensiveness and of features in Fabric Data Factory is what we want to achieve, and we have by and large achieved that. We can come to that later if there's questions around this.
And there we're talking about here the table connector,
exactly
whatever
connector, HANA connectors, all of those connectors we want to provide as a built-in experience, so that, as I just said, the platform is comprehensive and you don't have to necessarily enhance it with additional tools or surround it with additional tool sets, which again come with integration costs. Still, and that's the second aspect here, as I said, we're open, right? So we don't close the shop in any way. we want to, account for all the needs customers have. And we appreciate and understand that not all customers and not all customer needs can be satisfied by what we are providing. There are some niche use cases. There are some preferences by customers who have used other tools in the past. In the end, our main ambition and our main goal is, to make customers successful with their SAP data projects in Fabric. It's not so much about how the data gets into Fabric. It's that SAP can get that customers can get their SAP data into Fabric. That's the most and leverage it there, right? That's the most important aspect overall. And that's why we're also working very closely with a lot of partners. And you might know, and if you followed the recordings which we've done over the last couple of months, you have seen that we're working very closely with partners on integrating their solutions with OneLake, also integrating them with Open Mirroring, on which we have done some dedicated sessions in the past. So all of that is a very relevant and important cornerstone of our SAP data integration story as well.
And actually, what I also learned, we have their partners that have been in the SAP ecosystem for 20 plus years, and they had different integration solutions already. They have very sophisticated add-ons on the SAP side, or different technologies. That's what I actually was really surprised or really liked, that there are multiple approaches and different partners focusing on different aspects, how to get the data from an SAP system. And now with Fabric, they adjusted to also make the data then available in Fabric, but with different approaches. That's something that I found quite interesting.
Yeah, and there are many ways to look at this. For customers of these partners, it's very attractive to just continue to use their existing tool, leverage their existing skills, and just add Fabric into the picture. For us, from a Microsoft perspective, of course, Fabric is front and center and the most important thing, right? So for us, it's an enhancement of the capabilities we have by leveraging partners and leveraging the partner ecosystem, because these partners are again working with, for example, system integration partners, right? So all of these communities can come together now, leverage their skills and their experiences in Fabric very, very quickly. That's a super attractive combination.
Ulrich, is there any difference between how partners run the data extraction, or they always use the same technology? Do you have the knowledge how the extraction using partner ecosystem actually works behind the scene?
I mean, there are similarities across all these partners, right? They all use an ABAP add-on, which you need to install on the SAP source system, which basically gives them a lot of freedom to implement mechanisms to extract the data, to detect changes, also to serve use cases like which we consider exotic, but which we hear from quite a few customers. Not hundreds of customers, but still significant customers once in a while, again and again. For example, extracting mass data out of a BW query, which is a difficult topic because the BW query is not built for extracting, a billion of rows. Some of the partners have found clever ways how to, evaluate the data out of a BW query in a partitioned way, in a chunk way, so that they can even handle mass data. So these add-ons, that's a standard pattern which all of these partner solutions rely on. What they do under the hood and the mechanism they use to extract the data, that is very specific to each partner. They are not following the same approach, right? Everybody has their own IP and everybody has their own ideas and specific strengths and weaknesses. Well, there are no weaknesses, of course, on how to get the data out. So there are similarities, yes, but some of the partners, for example, use database triggers. Some use rather simple mechanisms like a table reader with additional tricks to identify changes. Some use events on the application server. So there's a lot of different opportunities there and options there.
And a lot of these partner solutions are also really SAP certified, which I also think is important for some customers.
Important aspect, yes, of course. All of them are. All of the partners we're currently working with are certified. So that's not a discussion.
Okay, so this is the built-in connectors that we provide as Microsoft. Then we have the partner ecosystems with lots of different partners that have solutions. And then there's also SAP and Microsoft.
Yeah, and that's, of course, super relevant as well. As I'm saying here, I mean, there are customers, especially the larger ones, who have multiple analytic ecosystems, who don't just focus on one, right? For smaller customers, it's very often a discussion either or, simply for cost reasons, also for skill sets, right? I mean, you don't have teams that can cover all of a lot of different technologies, so you focus on one. For larger customers, they can basically pick technologies based on, you know, what they're best suited for. And of course, there are sweet spots for SAP analytic solutions as there are sweet spots for Microsoft analytics, analytic solutions. And larger customers basically leverage these strengths and try to combine both worlds, right? For example, a typical example, which SAP is very, very strong at is, you know, finance reporting, financial planning, especially when it comes to planning. SAP has great functionality, which of course tightly integrates with SAP processes and SAP backend systems as well, in a way that no third party would probably even look at and invest in the same way. Right? For SAP, that's the most natural thing, and it's kind of one of the most important core processes they have. So it's a very natural thing. For everybody else, it's, well, not the bread and butter thing. From that perspective, we see and we get a lot of demand for combining the strategic tool sets on the SAP side, which is SAP Datasphere, and moving forward SAP Business Data Cloud, with our strategic toolset, which is Fabric. And this is also something we're working on. We already have some options there. We can use Datasphere for certain use cases. We don't have such a tight integration as we have with partners at the moment. But yeah, I mean, there's always hope that things are going to change in the future.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, I mean, when we look at something like Business Data Cloud, I mean, it's not only the integration. I mean, there are a lot of other areas where we are already very closely working with SAP on making, for example, Business Data Cloud run on Azure, run on BTP on Azure. There was the announcement at Sapphire that BDC is now also then available on BTP on Azure across multiple regions. More regions come up, and I think this is also something that is very important for customers that already run their SAP systems on Azure, their S/4HANA system, that are on the private cloud or previous rise and grow journeys, and now they also have BDC, the Business Data Cloud, available on Azure. And then with this additional integration in Fabric, then customers can really benefit from an Azure infrastructure, and then also from a good integration between Business Data Cloud and Fabric in the future.
Yeah, and as you say, I mean, you know, being able to run everything on the same hyperscaler, running everything on Azure and on the Microsoft Cloud, I think is a super relevant baseline. Avoiding, you know, egress cost and complexities, again, different skill sets and everything, right? So from that perspective, that's of course one relevant aspect. What we hear a lot, of course, is that customers have significant demand beyond that, right? They really want to integrate data sets from left to right, and honestly, in both directions, right? It's really about bi-directional things. It's not like we all always want to get the data out and do it our own way. We also see customers who want to leverage the non-SAP data, which they have inside Microsoft and inside Fabric in some cases on the Datasphere side. And that's, you know, enabling these use cases and basically making it possible that empowering the customer to choose an architecture which works for them. I think that should be the guiding principle. That's what we try to achieve.
And I think you touch on a very important point here, because we are often saying about connecting from Fabric to Datasphere, but the connection the other way around also works. You can connect from Datasphere and consume data from Fabric. So if you have some business-related data, non-SAP data in your Fabric environment, and you would like to bring this to SAP Datasphere, that's also possible, and we have customers doing this.
Exactly. And that's actually pretty cool. I have to say that I had not thought about this so much, but coming back to the point that you raised, Ulrich, about the skill sets, for example. So if I have some scenarios or I have some use cases, and then also the employees who are very familiar with Business Data Cloud, and they want to work with this, with SAP Analytics Cloud or something like that, and then now all of a sudden they not only have access to the information that is natively available in the SAP system, but via a Fabric to BDC integration, they also have information or access now to some non-SAP data. That can be also a quite interesting scenario.
Yeah, and in the end, I think we should try to provide a sufficient level of openness so that customers can decide and then choose the technologies which are best for their use cases. Right? It's not about pushing a customer, not necessarily about pushing a customer in a certain direction. It's about openness and collaboration. And then customers can make their choice and will make their choice. They will make their choice anyway, right? But I mean, making it hard and forcing customers to make compromise on this based on technological deficits and licensing and all of that, it's always cumbersome.
Yeah.
Nobody's happy about
that. Okay. So should we drill down a little? Maybe we can take a look at some of the connectors that are available. Maybe you can share some insights on some of these connectors.
Yeah. I mean, let's look very quickly, and that's something which I typically don't cover a lot, because most of the discussions we have in the SAP context are more about enterprise use cases, not so much self-service. But of course, we have a good set of connectors for self-service use cases. We have a BW connector, which you can use for BW, but also, by the way, for S/4HANA, which a lot of people do not know, but the S/4HANA built-in analytics, the embedded analytics in S/4HANA actually relies on the BW OLAP engine. So all the capabilities which the BW connector has to connect to a BW query also work with the analytic layer of an S/4HANA system. And that basically means you can connect to such a query, which technically under the hood is defined in a CDS view in the S/4HANA context as well, and get the data or connect to the data, wrangle and massage the data, transform it in a way that you need, maybe join your own data set, and then do your analysis in a self-service manner. Right? That's a very interesting use case. And with the further integration capabilities we have, you can also extract that data, right? You can do that on a scheduled basis. You can integrate that in a pipeline. So you can even build a process on top of this, even as a business person, right? So without any involvement of an IT organization. So that's the BW and S/4HANA use case. For the HANA database itself, and to a certain degree also for Datasphere, we have connectivity via the HANA connector, which is mainly geared towards calculation views, which unfortunately, which Datasphere does not leverage. Datasphere only uses SQL artifacts in the HANA database. But that is also possible to a certain degree with the HANA connector, even though it's specialized for calculation views. And again, you can connect to that data. In some cases, you can on the HANA database with calculation views, you can do direct queries, so you don't even have to move the data. In the case of Datasphere, I think you need to do an import before you actually start working with the data, but all of that is possible. So that's the self-service use cases. Just to show a very quick screenshot of how the Dataflow Gen 2 and data wrangling works in that case. You here see a screenshot of an SAP dataset. It actually comes from a Datasphere dataset here, and you see a column with an SAP date. Right? You see the proprietary string-like SAP data format, and you can easily transform that using a few clicks into a proper date format so that you can do calculations on top, also use it in your widgets accordingly. So all of that is very easily possible with Dataflows Gen 2 and the HANA connector in that case in a very nice and interactive way.
Let me maybe jump here with another question, because we often mention about pipelines and data flows, and I don't think we always users always understand the full difference between these two terms. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that pipelines act to simply copy the data from one place to another, maybe just improve the data type mapping, where in data flows we have possibility to run more complex transformations, make some edits to the data, select specific columns. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, actually, it's even the difference is even broader. Pipelines are actually an orchestration tool, right? And one of the things you can do with a pipeline is to use a copy activity to move the data, and that has exactly the characteristics which you point to. It's a very easy and straightforward ELT, right? Or actually EL. It's extract and load. There's not much transformation capabilities in pipelines, and that's copy activities, and that's not the point. It's about really, taking data and moving it to a different place, especially in this case, moving it into OneLake, but you can also move it beyond. Dataflow Gen 2 has the capability to integrate data, so to ingest data and write it into OneLake as well, so it can also move data, but at the same time, you can also do large variety of transformations, as you see here.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Now let's maybe quickly move on to the to the ProDI use cases and the feature parity with Azure Data Factory. So what we have achieved now is basically that the most relevant connectors which we have in ADF, which are the HANA connector, the table connector, and the BW Open Hub connector, are available natively in Fabric out of the box without a need to employ Azure Data Factory for such use cases anymore. That's the status as of end of April, early March this year, so about 2 months ago or so, we made these connectors available. We see great adoption for those connectors, and from a technology perspective, we pretty much did a lift and shift. So all the functionality, which the advanced functionality like partitioning, filtering, all of the capabilities which you need for mass data transfer, we simply moved over from Azure Data Factory, which also, of course, guarantees a certain level of immediate robustness, right, and maturity, because we basically leverage the implementation which we've had in ADF, which has been there for many, many years and which is used at I'm tempted to say at extreme levels. We're transferring petabytes of data using these connectors every month. For some other niche use cases, which you see below, which are always based on OData, the ECC and the C4C connector, we actually are going a different path. We basically document how to use a generic OData connector for that, and we will not move these connectors because we simply see that from an adoption perspective, when you look at adoption versus the maintenance cost we have, it's not really worth it, and customers are probably happier using a generic OData connector, which doesn't have any additional limitations as long as they can use, they understand how to use that specific connector with SAP.
Yeah, I mean, OData is an open protocol, so yes. I would also argue it should work with a generic OData connector.
Exactly.
And these connectors exist in Azure Data Factory and Fabric. So whenever a customer is considering a new workload, my recommendation is usually to go with Microsoft Fabric. That's obvious choice. But are there any use cases where customers should continue using Azure Data Factory? For example, if they already have existing workflows with SAP pointing, for example, to ADLS, they would like to start using Fabric OneLake. Can they reuse the same pipelines, or they should usually recreate these pipelines in Fabric? Is there any recommendation?
Recommendation is always difficult. It always depends on the customer's preferences. Technically, yes, you can use Azure Data Factory, and we don't plan to remove these capabilities. I mean, Azure Data Factory is an established product with a huge customer base, so it's going to stay. Our ambition is, as you said, to basically make sure that Fabric customers can do everything out of the box so that there's no real need to use Azure Data Factory. Mm-hmm. It will always be possible. Azure Data Factory has a OneLake connector, so you can use ADF in combination. And of course, if you have huge investments in ADF, if you have the skill set there, and you for example, in a migration scenario, we even offer tooling and integration capabilities between Azure Data Factory and Fabric to make such experiences seamless. We don't force anyone who has been using ADF into Fabric, right, to do a huge migration for no good reason, right? So it is possible to combine these things if necessary. If you're starting from scratch, of course, our recommendation, our ambition is to enable everything in Fabric so that you can really leverage this integrated platform without again, going into point-to-point solutions and point-to-point connectivity and so on. That would defeat the purpose of a SaaS solution. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think these are the built-in connectors that we have, so that we as Microsoft provide out of the box. Exactly. And now, if this is not good enough, or if I am already leveraging a partner, so let's take a look at those.
Yeah, so when it comes to partner solutions, we've been working with a set of partners, and you see the names here: Microsoft, Asapio, DAB, Simplement, SNP, and Theobald, over a bit more than a year to integrate their solutions with Fabric. Right? These partners are all specialized on extracting data from SAP. They have a significant customer base. I explained the story and the rationale earlier, right? It's both enhancing our capabilities and also being attractive to an established ecosystem, which these partners already have. We work in 2 steps with these partners, and we already had the certification discussion, right? All of these partner add-ons are certified, so no issues there. The first step we did was a simple integration with OneLake, so that whatever these partner tools can extract can be landed in OneLake in a file format. Most of the partners support Parquet files. Some support other formats as well, like CSV or so. And in the end, it doesn't matter for that lightweight integration. OneLake is a very flexible storage. The first point was just to enable customers to connect these 2 worlds and then start working with the data. So that was the first level of integration. But of course, we went beyond that and worked closely with these partners on mirroring. And we already did some sessions on that, and I'll quickly explain what mirroring is. Mirroring is basically a way to replicate data from a source, which can be a database, but in this context, of course, will be an SAP system, into tables in Fabric in near real time. Basically, the goal is to provide you with a synchronized copy of your source data in near real time. Right? Now, what we've done with partners is basically we've opened up our mirroring framework in a way that partner tools or third-party tools, even custom applications, by the way, can write data into the so-called landing zone of the mirror engine, where the data is landed first and kind of staged. And from there, the mirror engine will take it and merge the changes. So think of a first step in the process where an initial snapshot or change data is extracted from the source system, say your SAP system, and kind of dumped into this landing zone. And in this landing zone, you would find a sequence of inserts, updates, and deletes, which have occurred in the source system, right? And then our mirror engine in the second step will take the data, identify the inserts, updates, and deletes, and perform them on the sync so that you really have this synchronized copy I was talking about. And that integration we have done with these partner tools. Again, as of April this year, similar to the built-in connectors, these integrations are available. Our open mirroring framework is GA since built, which was May. So we see a lot of projects starting with these partners, with even some large customers who are basically now onboarding their SAP data using partner tools into OneLake in a near real-time fashion. And of course, from there can leverage it right away. For example, we can put a Power BI dashboard right on top, but you can also use the data for other purposes once it has landed in fact.
So in a summary, if we integrate data directly with the OneLake, then we get incremental copies that then we have to manually create a process to merge the data. And with open mirroring, Fabric takes care of this automatically. Is my understanding here correct?
Yeah, I mean, that's the purpose of mirroring, right? To basically provide you an end-to-end flow for change data capture, right? Where the external tool captures the changes and the Fabric engine merges the changes into the sync. The first integration with OneLake, well, it doesn't even have to be change data, right? You can just dump any kind of data there, a snapshot coming from anywhere. You just dump it as a file and do whatever you want with it. If it's change data, you would have to merge it yourself. You would have to write a notebook or so, anything of that sort. Or if it's just a snapshot, you can use it right away. That's basically how it works. Here you see a link. In our documentation, we have additional information on these partners and other open mirroring partners as well. So you find links to the partner solutions, also contact persons, so that you can basically get an impression of these tools. Here you see what that looks like in our documentation. And of course, we want to give you more than just food for reading. We also want to give you something visual. And we've done some recordings with Holger in the past on these open mirroring solutions by partners as well. So if you look at the same channel, it's the episodes 225 and 232, I think, and 234. Yeah, if I'm not wrong. Again, use the QR code or this URL. You will find these, and then all the partners nicely explain how their tools work. They do demos, So you really get a kind of a hands-on impression of how these tools.
You know what, Ulrich? I'll create a dedicated playlist for this.
Yes.
I can see you're filtering here for mirroring, but I'll create a playlist.
You're always smarter.
Perfect.
All right. Yeah. So that's the partner story. And of course, as we discussed, integration with SAP's toolset is super relevant for many, many customers as well. There are ways to integrate as of now. We talked about, the connections which, for example, Datasphere has to Azure Data Lake, which you can certainly also leverage with OneLake, because from a technical perspective, that's just the same thing under the hood. When it comes to getting data out of SAP using SAP tools, this is currently what's possible, right? So SAP will always recommend SAP Datasphere for such use cases, using Datasphere as a kind of ETL tool, using the premium outbound integration feature of Datasphere, which basically allows you to use replication flows to connect to your SAP source system and land the data outside the SAP ecosystem in Azure Data Lake. Unfortunately, there's no support for OneLake at the moment. So you need to use an ADLS Gen 2 container here. But then with Fabric shortcuts, you can basically attach that storage container to your Fabric OneLake and access it as if it were in Fabric OneLake. So that's what's possible here right now. It's kind of comparable to the first version of the integration we did with these partner tools, right? In the end, data is landed in OneLake. There's no merge process happening, but you can get access to the data and merge it yourself at the moment. That's basically the level of integration you have here.
Right. And this is basically the starting point where we are today, but we are obviously continuing to work with SAP to enhance the integration, to evaluate how we can now looking also at Business Data Cloud, how we can what we can do there, Business Data Cloud and Fabric, and there are a lot of discussions ongoing at the moment.
Yeah, of course. I mean, as you see, this integration is not where customers want it to be at the moment. In the end, one way to think of it, this is not a product slide, right? This is just trying to indicate where the gap currently is. Of course, it would be great to kind of bridge the gap between this OneLake storage, this ADLS storage container and the landing zone of OneLake, right? So that basically the mirror engine could take the data from there. That would at least, provide you with an end-to-end mirroring experience again. And that is something which of course, we discuss, and there are technical options to achieve that. Either SAP does the same work as the partners have done, or maybe we find ways to leverage the data which SAP provides. There are lots of options and lots of discussions going on, and I have hopes that we will soon come to a conclusion on that, because it's really something which customers ask for a lot.
Yeah. As you said, especially the big customers that have Datasphere in place or that have a BDC strategy, but they still have also a Fabric strategy. And then obviously there is this demand, the question, how can we get those two things better together?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's
great.
I think the story we have.
Yeah, I think that outlines beautifully how we can integrate SAP data into Fabric. Again, with these different options, pre-built from Microsoft, partner, and SAP and Microsoft together. I think this is a great way to get the data, to combine our two products basically. And I think with this, maybe as a next step, Bartosz, we can then also take another look of some of the things that you can do once we have the data in Fabric, and talk about this in a future episode.
Yes, that would be definitely a very cool episode where we can talk about customer use cases, how they build interactive dashboards, how they feed LLM with SAP data, and how they use all the new technology that's available within Fabric, like data agents, to ask questions about data, to get answers, where especially in this self-service context, where users don't require deep Power BI skills to create measures to get answers on their data. That I think is something we need to plan and think maybe in the next month we can talk how our customers achieve this.
Perfect. I think a nice teaser for a follow-up episode. With this, thank you so much, Ulrich. It's always a pleasure to have you here to talk about
the different options.
No, it's the pleasure is likewise. Bartosz, I'm looking forward to the next episode where we then maybe sometimes actually we're already pretty booked, so maybe August, September. Let's see when we can do this, but we'll have a follow-up then to build on what we can do now, or what we can do once we have the data in Fabric, and then talk about some of these enhancements there.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you, Holger.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.